I've learnt not to stress. I've learnt that I do things differently, and doing things differently apparently isn't a bad thing. As long as my students are learning and enjoying the experience, the process will be unique for each child. My earliest literacy memory at home would be my dad teaching me how to spell my last name. I remember I was in kindergarten. I had never done it before, and it was a struggle because he said that my words didn't look right, and I didn't understand why. I have always found school to be a place of anxiety. I can remember year 3 like it was yesterday. It was silent reading, and everyone had their books and were reading brightly. I had always read aloud, and it had never been a problem until now. A girl who frequently liked to make my time difficult got mad at me because I was reading out loud instead of to myself. That was really the first time I realized that I was different. I had many learning difficulties as a child. I participated in reading recovery until year 2 and was enrolled in special ed maths and English until year 6. I had always struggled with coordination to the point where my mum even enrolled me in coordination classes. I remember that they gave me little pencil grips to help make my writing neat. I was a slow reader and definitely a slow learner. It took me so much longer to understand a concept as to what it would take the other kids. It still does. I have to try really hard to understand something, whereas someone else will get it on the first go. My reason for becoming a teacher is to help my students progress, no matter how difficult it might seem. I want to stop my students from falling through the cracks, because I've worked with year 9 and 10 students who can't read or write, and it's heartbreaking. I want to give my students a chance, and I want them to feel supported just like I was. I have found that every child is different, and each child will excel and struggle with different concepts in different areas. On my first prac, I found it really challenging to help a child understand something that they were struggling with. I experimented with a few things and found that it was effective to use the things that the students were familiar with and good at to help build their confidence and then approach the things that they struggled with. I found that it was important to ensure all of my students felt safe to make mistakes. As long as everyone has a go, everything is worthwhile. It's an experience and it's a journey. I always try to make my lessons relevant and interesting, because the second a student zones out, you've lost them. I always try to make a fast-paced lesson that's fun and has really engaging activities. One lesson I taught was reading rotations. I had a child who was speaking English as his second language in a group with readers of a similar level. They were taking turns at reading aloud, and I saw something really great take place. The rest of the students stood up and stood behind the ESL child and helped him read. They all enjoyed it so much that they were giggling and smiling. It seemed that everybody felt connected. That's it, isn't it? Literacy is about connecting and making meaning. I aim to do exactly that in my classroom. The memory has always stayed with me of my mum and I doing my spelling words every night at the kitchen table. Every night after dinner, my mum would help me practice my spelling words. It was a routine that I am thankful for, because it shows that she took the time to invest in my learning, and I felt like a priority. This empowers me because I felt cared for, supported, important, and worthy, and I want my students to feel the same. I aspire to be a literacy teacher who makes learning an adventure. I want each and every one of my students to get excited about reading, to be able to decipher it and create meaning, to be immersed in a world it creates. I want it to be a world that is their own, a world where they don't need to worry and they only need to focus on the things that make them happy. which of course is learning. I hope to be a literacy teacher who can incorporate every KLA into my lessons. Well, sometimes. Most lessons I hope to enjoy reading and writing, at least in some form. I also hope to make my lessons multimodal, to incorporate digital literacy into my classroom, along with every form of ICT. I want to be a teacher who doesn't let my students fall through the cracks and be illiterate. I want my students to feel safe, included, comfortable to be themselves, and understand that it's more than fine to make mistakes, but as long as we learn from those mistakes. More than anything, I want to be a literacy teacher who helps students feel passionate about reading and definitely about learning. Codebreaker. I aim for my students to be able to decipher and understand the literacy in front of them. Text participant. I expect my students to make meaning from texts and find connections to their lives through experiencing the literacy. Text user. I will equip my students to use the knowledge such as reading and writing in social situations and help them find a practical side to learning and have them make connections when using conceptual knowledge outside the classroom. Text analyst. I expect my students to go deeper when reading and writing texts in order to detect the underlying values, beliefs, and also the reader's and the writer's position. Everything I've learnt about the social model of literacy has come from our in-depth discussions in class and my readings from the textbooks, reading in the primary years and writing in the primary years. We've had some pretty amazing discussions in class which has helped me to broaden my knowledge and think more critically about literacy and the teaching that I will have in my classroom. Tanya Fullwood's lectures on implementing literacy in a multi-stage classroom in Week 10 really assisted my understanding of the topic. I've developed a deeper understanding of literacy and its conventions, and I also have changed my view towards teaching literacy. Due to our lectures and our class discussions, they have allowed me to think critically and differently about how literacy should be taught and the practices that are actually effective and ineffective in the classroom. It was also really helpful to have Nathan Hill come and talk to us about implementing the new English curriculum back in Week 3. It helped me to somewhat wrap my head around what is required of me and how I can meet those expectations in the classroom. I have learnt many new concepts in English 1, and Edie has challenged my thinking on many occasions. I now have a deeper understanding of teaching literacy and the elements within it. I have a different outlook on teaching literacy as to what I did in the beginning, and I feel inspired to teach it and change the lives of my students and give them a new feel to learning.